All right, so we're diving deep into Jewish humor in film today. And wow, you really didn't skimp on the source material.
Yeah, there's quite a bit here. An academic paper, study guides, FAQs.
Hmm.
I had someone did their homework.
That's what we like to see. So, when you first hear Jewish humor in film, you might think, oh, okay, jokes in movies. But it's way more than that, right?
Right, right. You hit the nail on the head. It's really like a cultural lens, a way of looking at the world.
And one of the first things that jumped out from all these sources is that defining Jewish humor is actually really tricky.
Oh, absolutely. And it's fascinating, because it's not like there's a formula. It's so woven into the fabric of Jewish history and culture.
Like, you can't just say, okay, Jewish humor is X, Y, and Z and call it a day.
No, definitely not. But the sources do point to some common threads. One big one is challenging authority.
Okay, yeah, like questioning those in power, whether it's like religious leaders, politicians, or even societal norms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they use humor to do it, which, when you think about Jewish history, makes a lot of sense.
Makes total sense. I mean, facing persecution, navigating a complex relationship with the world, humor helps.
It becomes a powerful tool, a tool of resilience.
Oh, I like that. A tool of resilience. And you know what else really stood out to me from the sources is the self-deprecating humor.
Oh, that's huge.
Right. Like, it's almost a defining characteristic.
It is. It is. And I think some people might misinterpret it as just putting yourself down, but it's so much more than that.
It's about finding humor even when things are tough, turning pain into laughter.
Exactly. It's like acknowledging the difficulties, but not letting them consume you.
There's this one quote from the sources. One expert compares humor to a gift that lets you express things you couldn't otherwise say.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Really makes you think, like those dark jokes that you probably shouldn't find funny, but you do.
Totally. And it's not just about dealing with hardship either. There's also this aspect of building community through shared laughter.
Right, totally. Shared laughter, shared understanding. It's like those inside jokes you have with your friends, but on a cultural level.
Exactly. We get it. We've been there.
We're all in this together. Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of in-groups, one expert even defines a Jewish joke as something told by Jews for Jews only. I thought that was really interesting.
It is interesting. It makes you wonder how much of that humor translates to a wider audience.
Right. Like, do you need that shared cultural knowledge to really get it?
I think that's a great question, and it leads us perfectly to thinking about film. You have filmmakers like Woody Allen and the Coen brothers who are known for a certain style of humor, often seen as Jewish.
Yeah.
But they have huge global audiences, so clearly something is transcending those cultural boundaries.
It's like maybe you don't get every single nuance, but you can still appreciate the wit, the intelligence.
Exactly. It still resonates.
So the sources actually give us a little crash course on the history of comedy in film, which I thought was cool, like from silent slapstick all the way to the talking picture.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing to see how it evolved. And what's really fascinating is how it mirrors the changes in Jewish humor itself.
Oh, how so?
Well, early film was all about those visual gags, the physical comedy.
Right, like slipping on a banana peel.
Exactly. And that actually parallels a lot of early Jewish humor, which often focused on the everyday struggles of immigrants, things that you could communicate even without words.
Makes sense, especially given those language barriers many immigrants faced back then.
Right. But as films got more sophisticated, so did the humor,
Yeah.
became more intellectual, more introspective. And you see the same thing happening in Jewish humor. It starts exploring these deeper themes of identity, assimilation, all the complexities of the modern world.
So it's like from slipping on banana peels to existential angst.
Right. That's a great way to put it. And that's a journey we're going to explore even further as we delve into the work of Woody Allen and the Coen brothers.
Yes. Two huge names in filmmaking, both known for their distinct styles, and both often labeled as having that Jewish humor we've been talking about. So I think starting with Woody Allen is a good place to jump in.
Absolutely. The sources really highlight his background and style. The neurotic persona, the self-deprecation, it's all there.
And he doesn't shy away from those big questions either. Relationships, meaning of life, the whole shebang.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And he's specifically exploring them from the perspective of an American Jew. That tension between tradition and modernity, assimilation.
There's a quote from the sources that I loved. It said something like, if you're a neurotic bohemian Jew, you were born into a Woody Allen world.
Oh, I love that. So true.
It really captures his impact, right? He's created this whole comedic worldview that resonates with so many people.
And it makes you wonder, is it a worldview that's inherently Jewish? Or is it something more universal?
That's a great question, and I think that's something we'll keep unpacking as we go deeper into his work. But first, we got to talk about the Coen brothers, because they offer a very different take on this, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. Like night and day, almost. Their humor is so much darker, so much more absurd.
Yeah, sometimes it's downright uncomfortable. But is it still Jewish humor? That's what I want to know.
Well, the sources seem to think so.
Mm-hmm.
Even when they're not explicitly addressing Jewish themes, those influences are woven throughout their films.
So it's more about the sensibility, the approach.
I think so. The black comedy, the often bleak outlook on life, the willingness to push those boundaries with stereotypes, it all points to a certain cultural sensibility.
And you see that in their style, too, right? The deadpan delivery, the way they set up these unexpected twists.
Exactly. They make you laugh at things you probably shouldn't be laughing at.
There's this great example in A Serious Man. The opening scene is completely in Yiddish. It's set in this old-world shtetl, completely different from the main story, which takes place in modern suburbia.
Oh, that's such a brilliant scene. It's like they're saying, hey, this is where we come from. This is part of our story.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have characters like Barton Fink, Bernie Birnbaum, these Jewish characters who are incredibly intelligent, but also morally ambiguous.
Right. It challenges those expectations, makes you question what good representation even means.
It's like they're saying, we're not going to shy away from the complexities, the messiness of human nature.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes their humor so compelling.
So we have Woody Allen with his neurotic introspection and the Coens with their dark absurdity. Two very different approaches, both rooted in that Jewish tradition of humor.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not looking for one answer, one definition of Jewish humor. We're looking at the range, the diversity, the way it manifests in different voices.
It's like a spectrum of funny filtered through a cultural lens.
Exactly. And speaking of that cultural lens, well, maybe we should take a closer look at Woody Allen first. There are a couple of things from the source material I wanted to touch on.
Oh, please do.
Well, there's this recurring theme of the mother figure in his films. She's often portrayed as this overwhelming, almost godlike presence.
It's like the stereotype of the overprotective Jewish mother taken to the extreme.
Right. And Allen plays with that stereotype in a way that's both funny and insightful.
It's like he's exercising his own mommy issues on screen.
Maybe. But it also taps into those universal anxieties about family relationships, expectations.
Oh, definitely. And we can't forget the role of psychoanalysis in his work.
Oh, right. The sources even mention how Freud saw Jewish jokes as a way to express those repressed desires, anxieties.
And Allen takes that and runs with it. His films are full of those Freudian themes, those neurotic characters always overanalyzing everything.
It's like he turned Freud's theories into a whole cinematic universe.
Right. But through that exploration of neurosis, he's tapping into a very universal human experience. We all have those anxieties, those insecurities. We're all trying to figure things out.
And Allen's humor gives us a way to laugh at those anxieties instead of being consumed by them.
Like, hey, we're all messed up in our own way, so let's just embrace the absurdity.
And I think that's a message a lot of people find really comforting.
Absolutely. It's that reminder that you're not alone in your struggles. So we've got Allen and his exploration of the neurotic mind. What about the Coens? What key elements did the sources highlight about their humor?
Well, we talked about the darkness, the absurdity.
Yeah.
But one thing they really emphasize is the Coens' use of black comedy. Like, they find humor in situations that are often tragic, violent, even disturbing.
Right. It's like they're saying, life's a cruel joke, so we might as well laugh.
Exactly. And it's not just dark, it's also incredibly absurd. These outlandish situations, quirky characters, they make you question reality itself.
It's like they took normal life and twisted it into something bizarre but hilarious.
And they do it with such a straight face. That deadpan delivery just adds another layer to it, because you're never quite sure if they're in on the joke themselves.
Keeps you guessing.
Totally. It's like a wild ride through a funhouse mirror.
Ooh, I like that analogy. A funhouse mirror. So if Allen's humor is a deep dive into the neurotic mind, the Coens are more like distorting reality, making you see things differently.
Exactly. They challenge your assumptions.
Okay, so black comedy, absurdity. Anything else that stands out about the Coen style from what you read?
Well, they definitely play with stereotypes. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
Stereotypes about Jews, criminals, Southerners, you name it. But they do it in a way that's really subversive. It makes you think.
It's like they're taking those stereotypes, turning them inside out, and then using them to make a larger point.
Exactly. They're pushing boundaries, making people uncomfortable, and challenging those preconceived notions.
They're like, we're going to make you laugh, but we're also going to make you think about why you're laughing.
Right. That's what makes them so brilliant. They're not just entertainers. They're social commentators.
So Alan is exploring our inner demons. The Coens are exposing the demons of society.
I think that's a great way to put it. And both are important, right?
Yeah.
We need humor that makes us think about ourselves and humor that makes us think about the world around us.
Two sides of the same comedic coin.
And the fact that both Alan and the Coens are Jewish filmmakers, well, that adds another layer of complexity to their work.
Right. They're both drawing from that shared cultural heritage, but expressing it in such different ways.
It's like they're both branches of the same comedic family tree.
I love that. And that's what makes exploring Jewish humor so fascinating. It's not just one thing. It's a whole tapestry of voices, perspectives, all coming from this rich and complex cultural history.
Absolutely.
And it's a history filled with laughter and tears, which I think is reflected in their humor as well.
Oh, totally. Jewish humor is a reflection of that history. It's about coping. It's about questioning. It's about finding meaning in a world that often feels absurd.
And it's a reminder that even when things are tough, there's always something to laugh about.
Always. Laughter is powerful. It helps us connect. It helps us heal.
So as we dig deeper into the work of Alan and the Coens, let's keep that in mind. Their humor is not just about making us laugh. It's about making us think, making us feel, making us question the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, before we move on to some specific examples, I want to circle back to something the sources talked about a lot. Self-deprecation.
Yeah.
How do you see that playing out in Alan and the Coens films?
Well, with Alan, it's right there on the surface.
Yeah.
He's constantly making fun of himself, his anxieties, his insecurities. Like, he's the punchline of his own jokes.
And he does it in a way that's so endearing. It's like, hey, I'm a mess, but at least I can laugh at myself.
Right. And it makes us feel like it's okay to laugh at ourselves, too.
Like we're all in the same boat. We all have those flaws, those insecurities.
It's a great reminder to not take ourselves too seriously.
So it's vulnerability, but with humor. What about the Coens, though? Their self-deprecation seems a lot more subtle.
Oh, definitely. I don't think they're making fun of themselves directly, but they are critiquing aspects of Jewish culture and identity.
Oh, okay. So they're turning the lens inward, using humor to examine the good and the bad within their own community.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to push those buttons, to challenge assumptions about what it means to be Jewish.
It's like we're not going to shy away from the tough stuff.
Exactly. And they make you think. You know, they don't give you those easy answers. They challenge you to really engage with the material and come to your own conclusions.
It's like we're going to make you laugh, but you got to work for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes their humor so rewarding.
It's like a mental workout disguised as entertainment.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, I feel mentally stimulated already.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much depth there is to this whole world of Jewish humor.
So we've talked theory, history, all those key elements, but at the end of the day, it's all about the jokes. What are some moments from Alan or the Coens films that really stand out to you as classic examples of Jewish humor?
Oh, there are so many. But one that comes to mind immediately is that scene in Annie Hall where Woody Allen's character, Elvie Singer, is talking about growing up in Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
He says, I was raised in a Jewish neighborhood. We were upper middle class, which in Brooklyn is one step below poverty.
Classic Alan. He takes something so specific, so culturally rooted, and makes it relatable to anyone who's ever worried about social status.
Right. And he does it with that self-deprecating wit that makes you laugh and feel a little bit sad at the same time.
Another one that always gets me is from The Big Lebowski. That scene where John Goodman's character, Walter Sobchak, pulls out a gun in a bowling alley and yells, "This is not NAM, this is bowling, there are rules."
Oh my God, yes. That is so Coen. They take this totally mundane activity and make it completely insane.
And the way he delivers the line with such seriousness makes it even funnier.
The deadpan delivery is key.
So we've got these films filled with these brilliant comedic moments. They show us the range of Jewish humor, and they also remind us that sometimes laughter is the best way to deal with life's absurdities.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a question. We've talked about how both Woody Allen and the Coen brothers explore the complexities of Jewish identity through humor. But whose approach do you think is more compelling? Whose style resonates more with you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that's something each listener will have to decide for themselves.
Right. There's no right or wrong answer. It's about finding the humor that speaks to you personally.
Exactly.
And the beauty is you can appreciate both Alan and the Coens for what they bring to the table. They've both enriched our understanding of this really unique form of humor, and they've shown us how it can transcend cultural boundaries.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So, as we continue exploring Jewish humor in film, let's keep our minds open and our laughter muscles ready. There's a whole world of comedic brilliance out there waiting to be discovered.
And who knows, maybe we'll even learn a little something about ourselves along the way.
And on that note, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break.
So, we were talking about whether Woody Allen's humor is inherently Jewish or something more universal. It's a question that comes up a lot with his work.
It does. The sources kind of wrestled with that, too.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, so much of it is rooted in his personal experience, that New York Jewish background.
Right. But then the themes he tackles, love, relationships, the meaning of life, those are things everyone grapples with.
Absolutely. And I think it's the way he approaches them,
Yeah.
That neurotic, self-deprecating wit, that's what makes it feel so distinct.
One of the experts in the sources called it a uniquely Jewish brand of existential angst. I thought that was a perfect way to put it.
Yeah, it is. It's like taking those big philosophical questions, but filtering them through his own very specific cultural lens.
And somehow it works. Like people who've never set foot in a New York deli can still connect with his humor.
Right. It's the anxieties, the insecurities, that feeling of, what's it all about? I think that resonates with people everywhere.
It's like he's giving us permission to laugh at our own existential dread, which, let's face it, we could all use a little bit of these days.
Totally. And it speaks to that whole idea of humor as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Acknowledging the darkness without letting it consume you.
Okay, so let's zoom in on Alan's style for a bit. The sources pointed out a couple of things that I thought were really interesting, like the mother figure in his films.
Oh, yeah. That's a recurring theme, isn't it?
Totally. She's always this overbearing presence, almost mythical.
Right. And it plays into that stereotype of the overprotective Jewish mother, but Allen really takes it to a whole other level.
It's like she's this force of nature.
Right.
Loving, but also suffocating at the same time.
Exactly. And it ties into those anxieties we were talking about, family, tradition, cultural expectations. It's something a lot of people can relate to, even if their background is totally different.
And then there's that whole psychoanalysis thing. I mean, the sources even mentioned how Freud saw Jewish jokes as a way to express repressed desires and anxieties.
Right. Get it all out in a socially acceptable way.
Yeah. And Alan is obviously a big fan of Freud. I mean, his films are packed with psychoanalytic themes.
Oh, yeah. He's got those neurotic characters, always overanalyzing every little thing.
It's like Freud's theories became a running gag in his films, but there's a deeper layer to it, right? It's not just about getting laughs.
Oh, definitely not. He's making us think about the human psyche, all those anxieties and neuroses and desires that we're always trying to suppress.
It's like he's holding a mirror up to our subconscious.
Exactly. And the fact that he can do it with such wit and humor, that's what makes it brilliant.
Therapy disguised as entertainment. Okay, so we've got Woody Allen and his exploration of the neurotic mind. Now, let's jump to the Coen brothers. Their style is so different.
It is. It's darker. It's more absurd. It's kind of hard to pin down, actually.
Right. But what are some of those key elements that define their brand of humor? What did the sources say?
Well, one of the big things is their use of black comedy. They find humor in situations that are really dark, often tragic, or even violent.
It's like they're saying life's a cruel joke, so we might as well laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just dark. It's also incredibly absurd. The characters, the situations, they make you question what's even real.
Like they took normal life, put it in a blender, and hit puree.
And they do it all with a straight face. That deadpan delivery. It's like, are they in on the joke? Are we? It's hard to tell.
Keeps you guessing, which I think is part of the fun.
Totally. It's like a wild, unpredictable ride.
So if Woody Allen's humor is like a deep dive into the neurotic mind, the Coen brothers are more like a trip through a funhouse mirror.
That's a great analogy. It's distorted, it's disorienting.
And you never know what you're going to see next.
Exactly.
But it forces you to see the world differently, which is kind of the point, right?
Right. They want us to question our assumptions, the way we see things.
Okay, so black comedy, absurdity. Anything else stand out about the Coens from your reading?
Well, they definitely play with stereotypes. And I mean a lot.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Stereotypes about Jews, criminals, different groups. but they do it in a way that's really subversive.
It's like they're turning the stereotypes on their head, using them to make a bigger point.
Exactly. They push boundaries. They're not afraid to make people uncomfortable, to challenge those preconceived notions.
It's like they're saying, we're going to make you laugh, but we're also going to make you think about why you're laughing.
And that's what makes their work so interesting. They're not just entertainers, they're social commentators. They're using humor to hold a mirror up to society.
So if Allen's humor is about our inner demons, the Coens are more about the demons of society.
I think that's a great way to put it. And both are important. We need both kinds of humor, right? The kind that makes us look inward and the kind that makes us look outward.
Two sides of the same coin. And it's interesting that both Allen and the Coens are Jewish filmmakers.
Yeah, it is. Like, they're both drawing from that same cultural well, but they're coming up with such different flavors.
It's like two branches of the same comedic family tree.
That's a great way to think about it. And that's what makes exploring Jewish humor so fascinating, you know? It's not just one thing. It's a whole range of styles, perspectives, all coming from this really rich and complex culture.
A culture that's known both laughter and tears, which I think comes through in their humor too.
Oh, definitely. Jewish humor is a reflection of that history, that experience. It's about coping, it's about questioning, it's about finding those moments of joy even when things are tough.
Yeah, finding the light in the darkness.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so powerful.
So as we go deeper into Allen and the Coens films, let's remember that their humor is doing a lot of work. It's making us laugh, yes, but it's also making us think, making us feel things, and making us question the world around us.
It's not just entertainment. It's an experience.
Okay, before we move on to specific examples, I want to touch on one more thing that came up in the sources. Self-deprecation. How do you see that playing out in Allen and the Coens' work?
Well, with Allen, it's front and center. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's constantly poking fun at himself, his anxieties, his flaws. You know, it's almost like he's the punchline of his own jokes.
And it's somehow endearing. It's like, hey, I'm a mess, but at least I'm in on the joke.
Right. And it makes it okay for us to be in on the joke, too. It's like we can all be a little neurotic, a little messed up.
We're all in the same boat.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder to not take ourselves too seriously. But with the Coens, I think it's much more subtle.
Oh, definitely.
Like, they're not making fun of themselves directly, but they are looking critically at aspects of Jewish culture and identity.
So more like turning the lens inward, using humor to examine those complexities within their own community.
Exactly. And they're not afraid to push some buttons, challenge those assumptions about what it means to be Jewish.
They're like, we're going to talk about the tough stuff, even if it makes people uncomfortable.
Right. And they make you think. They're not giving you easy answers. They're forcing you to engage with the material.
It's like, we're going to make you laugh, but you got to put in the mental work.
And that's what makes their humor so rewarding, you know? It sticks with you.
It's like a mental workout.
Exactly.
Well, my brain is definitely feeling a little bit sore. In a good way, of course.
Mine too. It's just amazing to see how much depth there is to this whole world of Jewish humor.
So we've talked about all this theory, history, all these key elements, but at the end of the day, it's all about the jokes. What are some specific moments from Allen and the Coens films that really stand out to you as like quintessential Jewish humor?
Oh, that's a hard one. There's so many good ones, but the first one that pops into my head is from Annie Hall. There's that scene where Woody Allen's character, Alvy Singer, is talking about growing up in Brooklyn.
Oh, I love that scene.
He says, I was raised in a Jewish neighborhood. We were upper middle class, which in Brooklyn is one step below poverty.
It's so classic Woody Allen, taking something very specific, very culturally rooted, and making it universally funny.
Right, because we can all relate to those anxieties about social status,
Yeah.
you know, no matter where we come from. And he delivers it with that perfect blend of wit and self-deprecation.
Another one that always cracks me up is from The Big Lebowski. It's that scene where John Goodman's character, Walter Sobchak, pulls out a gun in a bowling alley and yells, "This is not Nam, this is bowling, there are rules."
Oh my God, that's such a good one. It perfectly captures that Coen's blend of black comedy and absurdity. They take something so ordinary, so mundane, and turn it into something completely insane.
And the way he delivers it with that deadpan seriousness, it's just perfect.
It really is.
Yeah.
You can't help but laugh at how ridiculous it is.
So these films, they're just packed with these brilliant comedic moments. They show us the range of Jewish humor, but they also remind us that sometimes laughter is the only way to deal with the absurdities of life.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. We've talked about how both Woody Allen and the Coen brothers use humor to explore Jewish identity, but whose approach do you think resonates more with you personally? Whose style do you find more insightful, more thought-provoking, or simply funnier?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one that each listener will have to answer for themselves. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's all about finding the humor that speaks to you.
Exactly. And what's great is that you can appreciate both Allen and the Coens for their unique contributions to comedy. They've both enriched our understanding of this particular brand of humor, and they've shown us how it can connect with people from all walks of life.
They really have.
So, as we continue our exploration of Jewish humor in film, let's keep our minds open and our laughter muscles ready. There's a whole world of comedic brilliance out there just waiting to be discovered.
And who knows, maybe we'll even learn a little something about ourselves along the way.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll be right back after a quick break.
You know, one thing that really strikes me is how both Allen and the Coens, even with their different styles, use humor to kind of process difficult stuff.
Yeah. And it's something this source has brought up a lot, that idea of Jewish humor as this coping mechanism, like using laughter to deal with adversity.
And it makes sense when you think about Jewish history, right? I mean, facing persecution, discrimination, humor becomes a way to find light in those dark times.
It really is. It's more than just laughter is the best medicine. It's like survival.
Exactly. And it makes Jewish humor so powerful. It's not just about making you laugh. It's about helping you cope, helping you connect, helping you get through.
And the sources actually use this term gallows humor, like finding humor in even the most dire situations.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It's like a way of saying, you can't break me.
Right. And you definitely see that in both Allen and the Coens' work. They tackle tough subjects, things that make you uncomfortable, but there's always that wink, that reminder that even tragedy can be absurd.
It's like, yeah, life might be a mess, but at least we can laugh about it.
Exactly. And I think that's what gets you through.
Yeah.
You know, that laughter gives you perspective. It helps you distance yourself from the pain, and it reminds you that you're not alone in it.
Totally. Like you're sharing that laughter, that experience with others. It creates this sense of community, this feeling of like we're all in this together, even when things are falling apart.
Exactly. It's that shared experience that's so powerful.
It really is. It reminds us that even when things are tough, we can still connect, we can still find joy, and we can still be resilient.
It's like humor is this reminder of the strength of the human spirit. So
Yeah.
we've talked about that darker side of humor, the coping mechanism aspect. But we can't forget that Jewish humor can also be so joyful, so celebratory.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole tradition of Jewish humor that's all about family, food, community, finding the funny side of everyday life.
Right. And it's got that warmth, that sense of connection that's so central to Jewish culture.
Exactly. And I think that's part of why it resonates with so many people. It's funny, it's insightful, but it's also heartwarming.
You know what it reminds me of? Matzo ball soup.
Matzo ball soup.
Yeah. It's got depth, it's got flavor, it's got substance, but it also makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
I love that. It's a perfect analogy. And just like a good matzo ball soup, Jewish humor can be enjoyed on so many levels. You can just enjoy the simple pleasure of a good laugh, or you can really savor those deeper flavors and cultural nuances.
And there's no one right way to make matzo ball soup. Just like there's no one right way to define or appreciate Jewish humor.
Exactly. It's diverse. It's constantly evolving.
It's always adapting to new times, new audiences.
Which is what makes it so exciting. There's always something new to discover, something to laugh about, something to learn.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of covering a lot of ground here. We talked about the history of Jewish humor, those defining characteristics, and how it all comes together in the films of Woody Allen and the Coen brothers.
I think so too. And hopefully our listeners now have a better understanding of just how powerful and versatile this form of humor can be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Jewish humor is more than just jokes. It's a reflection of a culture, a history, a way of seeing the world. It's about finding joy in the face of adversity, challenging authority, and really embracing the absurdity of life.
And I think it ultimately reminds us that laughter can be a really powerful force for good. It can connect us, it can heal us, and it can inspire us to be better, more compassionate, and more understanding human beings.
Well said. And with that, I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Jewish humor in film. Keep exploring, keep laughing, and until next time, happy viewing.